j'ai des choses à rajouter aussi sur
OK.
l'autre jour.
OK. Bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue à cette assemblée extraordinaire du 6 avril. On va aller pour l'ouverture de l'assemblée.
Qu'il soit résolu que la présente assemblée soit ouverte, proposée par
Oui.
conseiller Forgue et appuyée par
Oui.
conseiller
OK,
Mainville.
proposé, secondé. Tout le monde d'accord?
Oui.
OK, adopté. Modification, addition à l'ordre du jour. Madame Brizard, je crois que vous en avez quelques-unes.
Oui, alors, j'aimerais amener un point au 7.3 concernant les réunions virtuelles du Conseil. Alors, j'aimerais qu'on ait une discussion à ce sujet-là pour les prochaines réunions. Et puis ensuite de ça, sous le huis clos, j'ai un rapport verbal concernant un employé. Et puis, ça va être sous le point 18.2. Et puis, sur le point de la section de la loi municipale 239-2B, renseignement privé concernant une personne. Et c'est tout.
OK, merci beaucoup. Membre du Conseil. C'est tout. All right, on va aller à l'adoption de l'ordre du jour.
Qu'il soit résolu que l'ordre du jour soit accepté, incluant les modifications apportées séance tenante le cas échéant, proposé par...
Oui.
Alors, conseillère Lantier et appuyé par...
Oui.
Conseiller Brière.
OK, tous d'accord?
Oui.
Adopté. OK, déclaration conflit d'intérêt.
Pas ce que je sache.
OK, aucune, Madame Brizard?
OK.
All right. Là, on va passer à la présentation de Integrated Design, Engineering and Architecture. Je crois que ça va être M. Nugent qui va commencer la présentation.
Je crois que c'est Dino qui va,
Dino?
qui va
OK.
faire la présentation. Alors, présentement, là, on a votre présentation sur l'écran de la salle du Conseil. Alors, si vous voulez commencer, Dino, la parole est à toi.
Merci beaucoup. Bon après-midi tout le monde.
Bonjour.
Pour simplifier, ça va être moi et Luc ensemble. Je vais faire la porte-parole, mais Luc va m'assister. Et pour simplifier, je vais le faire en anglais si tout le monde est d'accord.
D'accord?
No problem.
Il n'y a aucun problème. Et je peux faire, moi, tu sais, je peux faire les deux. Je peux aller entre les deux, je peux répondre aux questions, n'importe quoi.
OK.
Donc, on va commencer. Les premières, the first slide, on va aller numéro 2, number 2, Project Understanding, s'il vous plaît.
Oui. We're there.
Okay. So just to recap, we're looking to make a community facility, lots of flexibility, multiple uses. The site has been confirmed, so we show it in our diagram. We've confirmed our site. We have a legal survey in hand. We've been designing with it. And then we just want to remind, just because this will become an issue later on, we'll just recap that the viability study or the business case study that was done right at the outset of this project 2 years ago has always recommended a twin field approach for this in order for it to make financial sense for the community to undertake, with the sidecar as support space. So just a little recap that we've already kind of done those studies, so when we get to the later parts of this discussion, we're just going to bear that in mind. Next slide, please.
OK.
So our project work plan, just a recap, we're stretching now into our second year, well, almost into our third year. So we did the feasibility study, we did the conceptual design, we, in the tail end of last year and early into this year, we reconcluded schematic design and are entering into design development phase now and construction documents. So that's where we are now. So phase 3 is sitting at around 35%. We had to go a little bit backwards, but I think we've worked hard the last few months to catch back up and really want to push forward. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Just a quick recap. A quick recap. Functional program. As I said before, still working with the same one. 2 indoor playing fields, perimeter walking track, lanes, sitting area or viewing areas, lockers, change rooms for each sex, washrooms, again for both sexes, and universal washrooms for barrier-free access. Obviously, building utility spaces, mechanical rooms, electrical rooms. A community hall accommodating 150 persons, which we decided and was accepted and approved last fall, with kitchenette capacity, and then the ability in the building to accommodate a potential for future expansion that remains as part of the design, although now it's much more resolved, as you'll see. Next slide, please. Okay. So, in terms of where we are with the documents, like I said, we've pushed ahead. We're well into phase 3 in developing the design. Now that all the big decisions have been made, we're really pushing ahead to coordinate with the consultants, advancing the drawings, resolving issues. We've been having regular meetings with Caroline to really solidify the design. So as it stands now, architecture is sitting at 60%, civil 50%, landscape architecture 35%, structure, mechanical, electrical are all 35%, and then cost estimating is at 75%. And we've got our draft of the latest estimates discussed today, later on in this presentation. So, as you can see, just the same site arrangement has been maintained. We've got an entrance from Limoges Road, and then the possibility of a secondary entrance or a future access to the back of the site has been accommodated. The rest of the arrangement, the parking, the turnaround loop for the buses, the bus drop-off has been maintained, and we've also got a connection or are working on a connection to connect to the school next door. And I'll move on to the next slide, please. In terms of continuing with the update, you can see that with that view, the drawings, this is the architectural drawings, well advanced, got a high level of detail, high level of planning. We've resolved a lot of the internal planning issues and the external look of the building, and are looking at refining in landscape and civil, as you can see, as well as the materiality of the building and some colors. So we've got those to show as well. So we'll go to the next slide is an early rendering of what the building will look like. Go to the next slide, please.
Yes.
So there we go. That's where we are with the building in terms of the design. We've got the main body of the. Oops.
Yeah. No.
Go back. Just go back one.
Quelle page est-ce que tu aimerais, Dino? Là, on est présentement Project Update Conceptual Image. Is that okay?
Conceptual images, oui, c'est ça.
OK, c'est beau.
Ouais. Non, c'est seulement que je voulais dire quelques mots parce que ça, c'est la première image vraiment qu'on a vue. First real good image of the way the building is going to look. We've really resolved the sidecar at the front, working out the geometry of the form and looking at some colors. You know, the deep blue surrounded by the black, very clean, very, very modern. We've got the large prefab structure in the back, which is going to house the 2 soccer courts. And we've picked up some of the detailing from the front to try and sort of tie the whole thing together. But we're looking very much as a very neutral, kind of a silver galvalume color for the back parts because of its large size in relation to the front, we wanted to make the front more prominent so that it really reads as the face of the building. And the back, we wanted to sort of blend more with the sky, so hence the choice of colors. You'll see that we have introduced a number of windows to sort of bring in natural light into the soccer area. And we've also have, and this is not currently included, but for future consideration, an external patio for the community hall you see in this picture. We also have, as an added bonus, but we're still fine-tuning it, there's actually a 3D view, a 3D fly-around model that we've done, so it does like a little bird's eye view all the way around the building, so you can see how the whole thing is going to look. Like I said, we had a rough version this morning, but it needs a little bit of fine-tuning before we can share it, but we'll definitely share it so that you guys can see how the building is looking and how it's sitting on the site. I think that's good for now. No, next slide, please. Okay. Let's get into we did a Class B estimate. It was just recently completed. One of the main reasons why we wanted to have this update meeting was to basically inform on the state of the budget. So we did a Class B estimate. We pulled together a Class B estimate based on the advancing of the design in order to confirm where we were with the cost. Now, just a reminder, the class of estimation that we're using is high. So the Class B estimate has an expected degree of accuracy of plus or minus 10 to 15%. So when we did this, one of the main reasons why we were looking at it was because, as you may have started to hear in the news media, all of the material costs across the entire construction industry, but in particular steel and wood, have escalated considerably in the last few weeks, as a result, well, directly and indirectly as a result of the pandemic. So this is a big concern to us because one of the main building materials for the pre-engineered structure is rolled steel, which is actually one of the ones where the price has actually gone up considerably. We started hearing from the pre-engineered building manufacturers that their costs were going to rise in somewhere in the order of 30 to 60%. So obviously this is a big concern because the budget remains tight for us. So we wanted to go and check that and then be able to report back. Now, the only thing is that at this point, we received an updated estimate with the exception of the cost of the pre-engineered building. As it stands right now, the pre-engineered building cost, the final update will come in the next 10 days or so. So we'll report what we have. Let's go to the next slide, please. Just a few items to keep in mind before we look at the numbers. The estimate has a number, the cost estimators have a number of exclusions for their estimates. And we've highlighted some of the key ones. An escalation of contingency beyond that identified in this estimate, meaning that the estimates, as we explained, the estimates always come with an estimated contingency based on what percentage we're at. So for Class B, like I said, it's 10 to 15%. However, given these abnormal times, and we're hearing this on many of our other projects, because the market rates are fluctuating so much that the estimators can only account for a certain amount of deviation. And what that's saying, the escalation contingency beyond what's identified in this estimate is usually just we're talking about extraordinary circumstances. Then there's a COVID-19 costs, and then there's accounting for winter construction. These are things that are currently excluded from the estimate. On the COVID-19 costs, a year ago when we first started, when the pandemic first started, there was definitely an argument to be made that COVID costs would be additional, and we've dealt with that over the course of the year. Now, at this point, a year in, and especially as we go into our third wave, it should be well understood that there's going to be costs associated with managing a construction site in a COVID environment. Less of an exceptional thing. So those are things that are going to be qualified as we go forward into the final pre-tender estimate, or the final Class A estimate. And then the escalation allowance. So they've allowed for a certain escalation or normal for a 3% escalation based on construction costs that may occur between March 2021 and the anticipated tender date of early summer 2021. However, like we've been saying, there's a certain amount of volatility right now, whereas this escalation allowance that we can normally understand for the pricing should be monitored carefully as we go forward, because the projection seems to be it's going to continue to rise. Hence what we're going to present next. The next page, where we're also talking a little bit more about the COVID-19 restrictions, is the next slide. Sorry, I didn't say next slide. Again, this is what I'm saying. At this point, the procedures have become well understood in the industry as they've been developed over the last year. So there's a certain amount that will be allowed for, but at this point, it's not a big shock like it was a year ago. These are understandable additions to the project cost that have to be accounted for. Next slide, please. So, to summarize, I think what we want to talk about is the risk factors that are affecting the budget. And the biggest one, like I said, is the availability of raw materials and the labor impact from the continuing labor impact from the pandemic. Our biggest one, of course, is the fact that the field house portion is built out of cold rolled galvanized steel, and we have a little bit of hot rolled, or what's called red steel elements to frame the sidecar at the front. But the biggest impact is going to be in the cost of the prefabricated structure. Next slide, please. So just to show, we included some current statistics from the steel industry, just to show you the kind of volatility that's been happening in steel costs over the last number of months. But the recent projection, this last bit here, is the most recent spike, which has taken us well below the normal fluctuations of the market. And that's the big concern. So where does this leave us? So if we go to the next slide. As it stands right now, and until we get the final numbers, we are sitting at a net increase of about $408,000. And now if we break that down, there's some good news in here, not all bad. The building, we see the variance, even in this estimate, like I said, I'll reiterate, we're still waiting for the final steel prices, but we see that we've climbed 20.9% on the construction cost for the building itself. On site development, because now we've been able to do some work and we've quantified some of those risks that we were carrying for geotechnical and site conditions, so the civil and landscape issues. Now a lot of that has been adjusted, so as it stands now, we've decreased almost 60% from our initial estimate before, because we've been able to refine the numbers based on a refined design. The general requirements, of course, have gone up, again, owing to COVID protocols and other factors for labor costs, labor availability, etc. So those are up 48.1%. Contractor fee, again, owing mostly to inflation, up 14%. And so at this point here in where we have estimated construction costs, so a comparison to December 2020 of 10.9 million, we're now at 11.6, or a 6.8% increase. Looking at soft costs, here everything is, we're holding pretty steady everywhere, except there is an increase in soft costs of about 4.4%, owing to a new legislation that came into effect in January 2021 at the provincial level for accounting for soil testing soil testing for removed soil due to excavation from the site. There's increased regulation surrounding that, which we anticipate will have a sort of a cost impact on the soft costs on that side of things, so we've accounted for it there. So this leaves us down at the bottom. Look at the bottom under full estimated construction budget. We've gone from 13.6 million to a 14 million now, or like I said before, an increase of about a net increase of 408,000 or 3%. Now it's worth noting that the 3% is still within the variance, the estimate variances that we had before at the Class D level. We're actually still below those estimate variances, but again, we're on an upswing. And so what's going to happen here in order to conclude this discussion, like I said, within 2 weeks we'll have a final update on the pre-engineered building costs, which will affect this first line under the building cost. So like I said, we're sitting at a 20.9 increase. We expect that to go a little bit higher. Next slide, please. So this is the schedule. Green line is where we are today. How we want to counteract this increase is we basically want to we want to speed up the completion of the documents and get to tender as quickly as we possibly can. Right now we're projecting tender documents by July 2021 with a forecast opening in late summer 2022. What we want to try and do is actually better that date and get out to tender sooner as a way of counteracting the steady increase in material costs, with the thinking being that locking down the order of the pre-engineered building will be the most important thing. And by going to market with completed drawings, we go for a fixed price contract as quickly as we can. The kind of feedback that we're hearing from the industry is even if we were to lock in an order for a pre-engineered building tomorrow, it wouldn't matter. The backlogs in the industry are telling us that the delivery will be much, much later. It'll be a long, long lead time. So we're still looking at completions in the originally, working to meet those original completion dates of late summer 2022. So we have to deal with this lag in between tender, ordering, and then delivery. And then I'll come to the last slide. Next one. After this.
Okay.
Project next steps. So recap. In terms of where we're going, is the project on the project management team side is we had started to talk about we want to confirm a public presentation date. We are now at a point where we're creating materials to facilitate that presentation, as you've seen. We want to clarify zoning bylaw and project impacts and processes related to site plan approval. We want to talk about managing soft costs. And there's an ongoing fundraising, from what I understand, that may or may not have an impact on the project. On the consultant side, on the idea side, on the consultant team, we're going to continue to coordinate the value management to mitigate that 3% overall budget increase, or whatever it is. Be updating the final Class B estimates in the next 2 weeks with the cost of the pre-engineered building. We're looking to resolve, get resolution with all of the various authorities having jurisdiction, again, with this idea of getting to tender sooner. And that includes any zoning adjustments. And like I said, last line, bolded and underlined, get to tender documents as quickly as we can. So that's my sort of initial oral presentation. I'm sure there's going to be questions, so we can always cycle back to some of the other slides to discuss those points.
Okay, thank you. We got to make a contingency for May for public viewing. We can't go much more before May.
I think we had agreed, Dino, for the public presentation on April 26th. Am I correct with that? Are we still par for the course for that, Dino?
Yes, that's the target.
And what we were thinking, Mr. Mayor?
The lockdown, the stuff.
No.
No?
So it's a public presentation because of the pandemic. Everything would be put on the website for comments. You know, so what we were thinking, if council is agreeable, is to present the schematic, pardon me if the term is not right, but the plans. Perhaps, I think we had agreed on the 23rd of April, 23rd, 24th, to give a chance to residents to provide their comments to their councilors. And at that time, so on the 26th, councilors could arrive with an informed decision, and then we could leave it longer, you know, for people that still wanted to provide comments. Is that correct, Dino?
That's correct.
Okay, so we would leave the schematic on the website for a certain amount of time, but it would be prior to the meeting of April 26th to give you a chance to receive comments. And then we would leave it a little bit longer, and then after that, once everything is rectified, or, you know, we would, Caroline and the architects could answer questions. And then after that, we would go for the tender documents, to prepare the tender documents for the building of the complex.
Okay.
Okay.
You want to come here? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, but just a general question. When we're talking about the presentation and asking the public for comments, what exactly are we asking for?
Nothing instrumental, because the schematic, you know, will be pretty well advanced. You know, we've made presentation on a few occasions. All the presentation are on the website, so people have a general idea of what is coming. So, if they see something glaring that we have missed, then, you know, perhaps we can address it. But we don't see anything structural in a sense where, you know, if there's a room that is presently 10 by 16, they want to make it 10 by 12, you know. But other things that we might have forgot and give them a chance to look at it and provide their comments. But nothing major.
Okay, I'm thinking
Yeah.
that perhaps we should think about some examples of questions or comments, or just to guide people so that, you know, we don't end up with a whole lot of comments that are not useful because we can't do anything with them.
Yes.
So if people have some idea of the types of comments that we're looking for, or
Yeah.
that, you know, we can bring back to council or to the project, that might be more helpful.
I think that what we'll do, and it's a good point, Councillor Lantier, is that, you know, we can, I will ask Caroline and the architects to prepare a text to just rightfully so, is to manage the expectations.
Like certain questions,
Yeah.
one field, two field, three fields. We've elaborated quite extensively. We're going two
Yeah.
fields, and it's not a question next time around. People want to change that. I don't think we can go there. But
And I think
The-
it's managing expectations and also not creating frustration, so that people understand that there are some things that are not going to change, but perhaps there are things where, you know, their feedback might be appreciated. It's just to see the difference between the two, so we can help focus on
Yeah.
what can be helpful.
Yes. Caroline, Mrs. Scott, would you have any comments regarding this? Have you heard Mrs. Lantier's concerns?
Yes, and I think we just want to, there might be something we missed. Sometimes people bring good ideas and thinking outside the box. Oh, okay, maybe can we just rearrange something? Obviously, we have to respect our budget. That's the big issue right now. We've set up what we can see, but sometimes people can just bring us that other little thought that, oh, what if you did this a little differently? Or that's what we're looking for. We have to keep within our budget, and that's the big issue right now for us also, which is going to play a big role.
So we will prepare a text accordingly, just indicating to the population what we are looking for, but you know, with you know, certain restraints, unfortunately. But as I said, you know, it shouldn't come as a surprise, because these schematics have been presented already, I would say a couple of times. And I think now it's more in detail, but you know, people will have a chance, and it's something we said we were going to do, to have a public presentation.
That's right.
Okay.
And I would add to that, you can use our presentation here today as you know, we would use this, some of the material that's been contained within these presentations, we would adapt this and create this style of presentation for you to post online.
Okay, so
We would mix drawings, we could do, you know, FAQs, or try to answer obvious questions right in the presentation, as well as highlight certain features, like for instance, like what's the field going to be made of? Well, we can talk about that. And that way it'll sort of, as you guys were saying, sort of start to focus, you know, or curate, to use Luc's word, to so that we have you know, we shape the response that we'll get by the way that we present it.
okay, yes, no, agreed.
I think it's also important, Jose, that if we're going to post it ahead of the council meeting in the public presentation, it'll give people time to look at it ahead, and if they can send us their questions ahead, all the better, and we can deal with those questions the night of the presentation.
Okay, yeah, good point. Well, that's the intent.
Oh.
Yes. So we will work on that,
Good.
on a messaging on our website, and with Mr. Léveillé, Caroline, and the architects, and make sure that everything is clear. Thank you.
Okay. Question?
I've got a quick question, Dino. It's considering the general requirements. Now, you say they're COVID related, but as we progress with vaccinations and with the optimism that will come with the vaccinations and different requirements and all that kind of stuff, you see those types of costs maybe going down as the project progresses? Because I'm sure what is required today may not be required in October, because most of the people working on site or the costs related to that will be vaccinated. So is there a real, again, I'm trying to say a sense of optimism that maybe those costs may come down as well as we progress into the vaccination campaign?
I mean, optimistically, yes. Although, you know, we're taking a sort of a risk management approach, really.
Right.
In the sense that even with vaccinations, we're still hearing from public health authorities that, you know, a certain amount of masking and protocols will still be required despite the vaccination. So we're not sort of assuming that it's all going to be back to normal by the time that we build. But again, the actual, I'll stress this, that the effect of that on our budget is actually quite small.
Right.
The part that won't go back to normal as quickly will be the escalating material prices. That one there is the bigger risk, and that one won't necessarily come back to normal anytime in the foreseeable future. Hence the reason to sort of get going faster,
Right.
to sort of try and head them off, if you will.
There's a couple of factors involved. The vaccination program in the States is going much faster than in Canada here. So we should get those steel bills working a little bit faster. Plus, the Canadian dollar is almost at 80 cents, which it's not much, but it does help a bit.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I will also say this. The other thing about the COVID measures is worth mentioning. Again, because construction is one of the few industries that really hardly stopped at all since the beginning of the pandemic. And so a lot of the measures, the on-site measures, as we've seen this on various construction sites that we're on as part of other projects, everyone sort of kept rolling and you know, adopted the measures as just, you know, another set of safety procedures on top of the standard ones. So again, it's like, even if they all sort of, you know, if we were lucky enough to have them all sort of be withdrawn towards the end of this year, like I said, the impact was fairly minimal in terms of productivity, or in terms of the impact for us on cost. For sure, if we go to tender, like if the plan is to stay the course and to get to tender as quickly as we can, the tender prices received will actually reflect what the current reality is. We just have to be mindful of that.
All right, thank you. And then I guess staff will be contacting you for what we're gonna put up on the website for consultation with the and introduce the project to the population. All right. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Luc. Thank you, Dino. We'll be talking again later on. All right. Bye now.
Thank you.
Merci. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Donc, Monsieur le maire, j'ai une résolution.
Oui.
Alors, qu'il soit résolu que le Conseil approuve les prochaines étapes du processus pour le complexe sportif de la Nation tel que présenté par IDEA Integrated Design Engineering and Architecture. Qu'il soit aussi résolu que la date de la présentation publique du complexe sportif de la Nation soit tenue à la réunion du Conseil du 26 avril 2021. Proposé par
Oui.
Conseiller Brière et appuyé par
Oui.
Conseiller Fogg.
OK. Proposé, secondé. Tous d'accord?
Oui.
Oui.
OK. Adopté. Prochain, c'est une lettre d'information de M. Daniel Deforge sur une subvention qu'on a eue.
Oui, alors c'est 7 700 $ qu'on va recevoir. Et puis ça prend une résolution du Conseil pour aller de l'avant.
Oui, parce qu'il faut signer des documents.
Oui. Alors, Qu'il soit résolu que le Conseil approuve le programme de subvention pour la sécurité incendie pour augmenter les possibilités de formation. Qu'il soit aussi résolu que le maire et la DG greffière soient autorisés à signer l'entente de transfert de paiement de subvention pour la sécurité incendie. Proposé par
Oui.
conseiller Mainville et appuyé par
Oui.
conseillère Nantier.
Tous d'accord?
Oui.
OK, adopté. On va aller à la prochaine item qui était rajouté, 7.3. Les réunions, les prochaines réunions. C'est une discussion qu'on peut avoir avec vous autres, mais encore là, avec la pandémie. Est-ce que vous vous sentez tout en sécurité ou bon, si vous voulez aller des conseils Zoom? Y en a-tu qui sont écœurés de Zoom encore? C'est vous. Et puis, j'espère qu'on casse pas de protocole. Mais en tout cas, c'est après, aujourd'hui, s'il y a du monde qui font des plaintes, il va falloir aller à Zoom. Ça, c'est sûr. Mais je vais avoir vos idées. Là, parce que
Moi, autant que c'est sûr que c'est moins plaisant avec Zoom. Ben, moins plaisant dans le sens que c'est pas la même dynamique parce qu'on est à distance. Il y a quand même le fait qu'on est là aussi pour être l'exemple au public. Puis,
oui, et puis là, je parle d'ici à la fin d'avril.
C'est ça.
Comme au mois de mai, on tournerait, si Dieu le veut, à normal.
C'est comme.
OK.
C'est un petit peu la même opinion. C'est pour un peu donner l'exemple aussi. Puis,
Oui, parce qu'on a tous des ordinateurs, c'est comme ça, ça se fait.
D'accord avec Marie-Noël, puis aussi dans le sens que c'est prouvé que ça fonctionne, on l'a déjà
Oui,
fait, puis
oui.
que la technologie est bonne, puis...
C'est pas pour toujours.
OK.
Non.
OK, d'abord, je crois que Mme Brizard, c'est ça qu'elle voulait avoir une direction du conseil. Là, vous l'avez. OK.
Oui, alors on a fait des essais la semaine dernière et puis ça a fonctionné. Alors,
Ça, c'est pour le Zoom pour le public.
oui,
OK.
oui, pour le conseil. Alors, tout fonctionne parce qu'il fallait tout coordonner avec nos caméras ici et puis le Zoom et l'Internet et tout ça. Alors, moi, je vais être ici en salle de conseil et Mme Roy aussi. Puis, on va tout gérer ça d'ici. Puis, vous allez pouvoir rester dans le confort de votre maison. D'accord?
Je pense que ça nous permet aussi de faire un essai si jamais il y a une des circonstances extraordinaires là,
Oui.
à l'avenir.
Pas méchant qu'on essaye le système pour le vrai. OK.
OK.
Merci beaucoup. Bon, là, on s'en va à des règlements municipaux. Il y en a 3, hein, Mme Brizard?
Oui, alors, je ne sais pas si vous avez eu la chance de les regarder. Madame Maisonneuve, là, elle peut répondre à vos questions si vous en avez, mais on a tout fait réviser ces documents-là par nos avocats. Alors, tout est en bonne et due forme. Est-ce que j'ai besoin d'appeler Madame Maisonneuve?
Et
OK.
puis le dernier aussi, c'est pour les sourds aussi, il était ajusté pour la situation à Saint-Albert. ça.
OK, alors qu'il soit résolu que le règlement numéro 54-2021, interrèglement pour établir des frais pour l'utilisation de l'eau municipale à Limoges, soit lui adopté en première, deuxième et troisième lecture, proposé par
Oui.
conseiller Brière et appuyé par
Oui.
conseiller Fogg.
OK, tous d'accord?
Oui.
Oui.
Adopté.
Maintenant, le règlement 55-2021. Qu'il soit résolu que le règlement numéro 55-2021 interrèglement pour établir des frais pour l'utilisation de l'eau municipale à Saint-Isidore soit lui adopté en première, deuxième et troisième lecture. Proposé par
Oui.
conseiller Mainville et appuyé par
Oui.
conseillère Nantier.
Tous d'accord?
Oui.
OK, adopté. La prochaine, c'est le règlement 56-21, les égaux.
Oui. Alors qu'il soit résolu que le règlement numéro 56-2021 interrèglement pour établir des frais pour l'utilisation du système des égouts municipaux soit lui adopté en première, deuxième et troisième lecture. Proposé par
Oui.
Conseiller Forgue et appuyé par
Oui.
conseiller Brière.
OK. Discussion, tous d'accord?
J'avais rien qu'une question, là, c'était concernant, je pense que il y avait discussion, José, concernant, tu t'en rappelles-tu, quand on avait mis comme c'est pas un water ban, là, mais
Oui.
puis là, il y avait des résidents du Given, ça a été settlé, ça.
Oui, alors là, ce qu'on a fait, alors une fois que tous ces règlements-là sont passés, on a fait des révisions avec les avocats. Puis il y a un bylaw qui s'en vient qui va relier tout ça.
OK.
Puis qui est quand même assez général pour les inquiétudes qu'il y avait à Limoges.
OK.
Alors, ça a été revisé par les avocats.
OK, parfait. C'est
Ça s'en
que-
vient.
Parfait,
Oui.
OK. C'est ça, c'était ma question.
Oui.
OK. Good. Merci. D'abord, la donnée est adoptée. Tous d'accord? OK. C'est bon. Ça pour ça. D'abord, on est rendu au huis clos.
J'avais mon chose de huis clos, c'est ça. Il était pris à l'arrière d'une amie de filière. Alors, qu'il soit résolu que la présente assemblée soit ajournée à 16h15
Oui.
pour une session à huis clos conformément aux sections suivantes de la loi municipale 2001, section 239.2, renseignements privés et D, relations de travail, négociations avec employés. Proposé par
Oui.
conseiller Forgue et appuyé par
Oui.
conseiller
OK.
Mainville.
Tout le monde d'accord?
Oui.
OK. On est à huis clos.
Non, je vais mettre la caméra à huis clos. OK.
OK, d'abord, on va sortir du huis clos, là.
Oui, alors qu'il soit résolu que la présente assemblée soit réouverte à 17 heures.
Oui.
Proposé par
Oui.
conseiller Forgue et appuyé par
Oui.
conseillère Lantier.
OK, merci. On sortit du huis clos, on a parlé du personnel, les deux systèmes. OK.
Oui, alors qu'il soit résolu que le Conseil approuve le rapport AD-RH 02-2021 concernant une embauche et la négociation des conditions de travail, proposé par
Oui.
conseiller Brière et appuyé par
Oui.
conseiller Mainville.
OK. Tu as d'autres discussions là-dessus? Non? OK. Tous d'accord?
Oui.
OK. Adopté. C'est bon. Bon, là, les règlements confirmés procédure.
Oui, alors qu'il soit résolu que le règlement numéro 63-2021 pour confirmer les procédures du Conseil à ses réunions extraordinaires du 6 avril 2021 soit lu et adopté en première, deuxième et troisième lecture, proposé par
Oui.
conseiller Fogg et appuyé par
Oui.
Oui.
OK. Tous d'accord?
Oui.
OK. Adopté. Et puis, l'ajournement à 17h01.
qu'il soit résolu que la présente assemblée soit ajournée à 17h01, proposé par
Oui.
conseillère Lantier et appuyé par
Oui.
ou ensemble. Alors, conseiller Brière. Il l'a dit fort.
OK. Bien, d'abord, tous d'accord?
Oui.
Et la réunion est terminée. Merci.